Hello, my name is Aram Shakir. I chair the East Brunswick Human Relations Council. Our goal at the council is to create and maintain a community where diversity is not just merely tolerated and accepted, but celebrated and respected. We at the council want to build bridges between cultures and communities and create a more innovative, collaborative, and inspired world.
Hi, my name is Taryn Weber. Welcome to another installment of Coffee and Conversations. We have been doing these installments since 2017. Today's event is very important as it highlights East Brunswick public school systems. These Coffee and Conversations feature topics of interest to our community. Today we have the pleasure and honor and privilege to chat with Dr. Mamman, the newly appointed Superintendent of East Brunswick Public Schools. For nearly 25 years, Dr. Evelyn Mamman has served New Jersey public schools with a steadfast belief that meaningful, lasting success in teaching and learning begins with strong relationships. Her career has taken her through diverse communities, shaping her commitment to equity, collaboration, and high-quality educational opportunity for all students. As the superintendent of East Brunswick Public Schools, and with her prior experience as assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction in South Brunswick and in Tenanfly, she has led complex systems with a focus on supporting educators and empowering students. She holds a doctoral degree in arts and letters and a master's degree in English education. Outside of her professional life, she's a proud wife and mother of 2 adult children. We welcome Dr. Mamman.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Cerami, and I'd like to begin our discussion with the question of what you see as the district's greatest strengths and the biggest challenges you face.
Okay, so East Brunswick's strength lies in its diversity. You know, it's a big town, lots of different cultures. So the diversity of language, abilities, socioeconomic group, just expertise. I think when you have a town such as East Brunswick that is just full of so many different people, ideas, and perspectives, it serves to strengthen the community better. And that the communities where our children are from, so they're growing up in this very special, multifaceted place. And it really reflects the community and the world that we're sending them out to, that they're going to have to learn to navigate. So it's good that this is a good mirror for that, right? Our challenges remains, the budget. And maybe because I'm steep in it right now, that's all I can see. Because, our school system here is legendary for its performance in academics, in the arts, in athletics. And you want to be able to hire and retain high-quality staff, right? Or teachers or administrators, other personnel that are non-certificated. Either way, you want to be able to be at the forefront and the cutting edge of what's next, right, in this very technological age. And reality is that we need money to do that. And we need money to do that in a way that does not hurt homeowners, taxes and all of that. I mean, East Brunswick already high tax bracket. And so that, how does one continue to hold on to that makes East Brunswick Public Schools great on the budget? That's such a challenge.
So as a follow-up to that, because we hear a lot of different rumors, what is the thing that is straining the budget? Like, what do you see as opposed to maybe 10 years ago that's now become a strain on the budget that we might not have seen before and that is posing this challenge of maintaining the quality of education that you are striving to maintain?
So that's a very good question. In the last 10 years, the laws have changed. So for instance, we could have 30 kids in a class or 28 kids in a class. That same space now, with new regulations, we can't keep the same amount of kids in there. So that means you then open up and you need more classes, right? And you need more teachers, right?
More supplies. Right?
More supplies, more everything, right? And then we're doing better in identifying the needs of kids. So we're meeting a lot of our kids where they are. So it's very much more almost individualized, they're coming with different needs. The community has changed. And so when the community changes, the needs change. It's not a one-size-fits-all across the whole spectrum, right? Whatever it is. And so you need money for that. Then there's inflation. There's inflation and there's health insurance. We have to give people benefits. And health insurance is through the roof, as you know. Even just the cost of living is high. The things we used to be able to buy, we can't buy them at the same price. And it's the same thing you see in with groceries. I don't know about you, but they've gone up. And whatever has happened in the world has been in the last 10 years. For instance, we've had COVID, and that came with its own challenges, right? And we're still seeing that for the next, another 10 years before we say, oh, that's
the effects of
it. It's and that effect really put a strain on mental health more so. I mean, we were seeing that in line with social media and technology.
Right.
But then when we got isolated with COVID, our kids really, even the adults, right, we're seeing that. So a lot of money in the mental health supports and hiring professionals to be able to kind of help with it, that we are allowed to as a school district. All of that contributes to the budget strain, right? And then there are different systems now in terms of schools and options, which are a good thing, but it also costs money. So I could keep going, but those are the big stresses. Transportation,
right?
Right.
Look at the price of gas. It affect the price of gas. Transportation.
That we did not account for,
right?
Because we didn't know.
Right, and then you have a strain on a budget that's already made that was unexpected.
Exactly.
And those things always come up, even if you leave some money in contingency. That doesn't guarantee that
it doesn't.
Contingency covers and really unexpected.
No, and we have a 2% cap.
Yes.
When you roll over from year to year, is more than 2%. So right there is a deficit model that's not
Inflation
working.
is 3%, and your cap is 2%.
Yeah.
You're already 1% behind the 8 ball.
Exactly. So this is how we start every year. It's not sustainable.
Right.
Inflation is a real thing. It affects us in every aspect of life.
Right.
A $40 grocery run is now $100.
$100.
Can't
And
stay
so if they're only capped at 2%, how do you make
Capped
up
at
a 3 or
2%.
3.5% inflation without having to do something?
Yeah.
So I'm going to piggyback on something that you said. You spoke about mental health in your children, and that is a matter that's near and dear to my heart. I also serve on the East Brunswick Mental Health Task Force along with Holly.
Yes.
And our focus is to address mental health task force that the mayor actually, stemming from COVID, at mental health concerns and issues like exploded after COVID. So he also formed this mental health task force that we sit on. And so my question to you regarding that is, what is your approach to student mental health and emotional well-being, and how do you ensure that the student needs are being recognized?
So mental health, my approach isn't just one thing, right? Because if you think about a whole child in the center, they need so many different things, right? Whether it's their social-emotional wellness, that is tied to their mental wellness, their physical wellness tied to their mental wellness, psychological tied to their mental wellness. So their relationships and the way they experience school and life, all of it. So for me, the approach to mental wellness has to be a multi-tiered system, right? So we look at tier one, for instance, the way we welcome our kids to school, the way we talk to our kids, the way they're able to do what it is they need to do, the way we wrap around services around them to relationship building, even just their awareness, self-awareness, all of that is tied to mental wellness. And so if you look at our tier one, like a multi-tier system for all our kids, doesn't matter who you are, what you need. When you come into the school, are you feeling safe? Do you have friends? Is there a trusted adult? Are you assimilating and is there a safe space for you to be who you are? Mm-hmm. So at the very first level, we should be able to have that. And then tier two, you're looking at who needs more counseling, right? Who needs more behavioral support? What does that look like? And then the tier three for the really intense therapies and all of that. And again, we talked about money earlier. Mm-hmm. We can't even, our school counselors are certificated to do certain type of counseling. We have our SACs and then or our school psychologists. There are some of these therapies that need more that we can't even afford, but we should be able to send them out and make sure that they're able to see a doctor and so on and so forth. And that itself is money. But you see all the different pieces of it that that account for mental wellness. So my approach will be just that it has to be a coherent system of support. So it can, and when we talk about coherence, is that the system operates that way so that no matter where you are, what school you're in, we know what you need. And whatever you need, you get what it is that you need. Not that you get it here, but you don't get it over there, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And that becomes like when you have a district this big with a huge diverse population of kids with different needs, you cannot necessarily mirror one school to have everything. You could say at the baseline, we should all have counselors. All schools should have counselors. All schools should have school psychologists, should have the SACs and all of that. Okay, right? Foundational, tier one.
Right.
Then when you start to go into tier two, you can't fund that in every building. So you start to see, okay, what school pairs, and we have like traveling specialists to do some of that work. And then tier three, where do those programs live? So having a system like that that's consistent and coherent and that is visible for everybody to see, and the kids know that if I need help, I can go here. I can see this person, I can talk to this person. It's going to be just, for me, the way we ensure that students' needs are being recognized, right? Because if we don't have those structures in place,
Right.
then we
Makes sense.
we won't be able to know what they need. And that, again, very important piece of mental wellness and support and approach for our kids is our relationships with their families.
Yeah.
They're with us 6-7 hours a day. They're home hopefully they're home, Right. So we have to have a partnership where it's not us versus them, but that together there's a community of care wrapped around kids, and that they feel that. Because when they don't feel that is when they feel alone, and we start to see some issues, right? So you can imagine doing all of that and building all those relationships around, so that for me that would be the best approach. To be able to do that, and every adult in the system knows that that's what it is. Because sometimes we have things, but people don't know. So how are we communicating that? How are we constantly sharing what it is that we're doing, so that if we are struggling in any one area, who knows, in a diverse community as this, who can help us, right? So, and then I think a society that takes care of its children is a society that lives and stays longer, right? That cares about, we say that children are our future, but we have to create a society for them where they're seen and heard and cared for, and
Makes sense.
the adults need to
Yeah.
work together to accomplish that ultimately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I loved your tier 1 first aspect, greeting kids with a smile on their face.
Yeah,
I feel like
yes.
their days will
feel-
start off.
Yeah.
To feel
Well,
nurtured and
to be
welcomed.
nurtured.
right?
Yeah, you know how in elementary school they have like a morning meeting. They come in,
Yeah.
they sit on the rug, and you're like, "So what did you do today? Is it cold outside?" So they're learning little things. It makes them feel good.
And it also
you
gives-
know each person's name.
Yeah.
Right.
It also gives a teacher a chance to see if the child looks like
Like-
they're having a problem, having a bad day, or is struggling. Because now you're seeing them in not the environment of sitting and doing their work,
but
in an
this-
environment of being who they are, where they are more likely to let their
Let
guard
it die
down.
down. Yes, and I always say, like, elementary school, you just see the joy.
Yeah.
Even for me now, when I want to just be happy and not, not being the problem.
Yeah.
That I'm like, let me just go to an elementary school and go to a kindergarten classroom. They'll look at you like, who are you? And I'm like, oh.
How do we implement that for middle schoolers and high schoolers?
So let's talk about that. For middle school.
Yeah, middle school.
Hormones.
Yeah, I love middle school actually. Middle school is one of the I taught 4th through 12th grade, but middle school is where I spent most of my teaching career. So it's that child in the middle. I love it. They don't, one day they're happy, they need you, the next day don't. Maybe that says something about me. I don't know. I just love that, right? And so it's always so one has to be, they're growing, right? What you can do with elementary children, you can't necessarily do with the adolescents who, like, I'm grown now because I'm 11, 12, 13, the tween years. So I think being able to establish a responsive type of classroom structure. There's so many different SEL programs where that is particularly catered to that the middle school age child, because they know what's happening, right? This is where they're coming into their own. You can still get them. I love it, but they're very responsive to different things. But you need to be able to speak their own language. So you have to have a very clear system of what that looks like. Some schools have advisories where they have advisory or homeroom. Everybody comes to a homeroom, and they have that touch with their homeroom teacher. That's the person that does. And then you send them off.
That's how I grew up in New York.
Right?
Middle school age, we had a homeroom.
So
We had a teacher who was our teacher.
who was your teacher. You go to all the different classes. You start your day and you end your day is predictable.
We had that in East Brunswick too when I was growing up.
Yeah. Where were you? Were you in Churchill? Where were you for age? Where were you?
I mean,
What was the middle school?
I absolutely loved school. But I was one of those maybe that 10% kids that liked school.
No, we have more than 10%.
No.
I mean, 10% kids that actually liked school.
I think in East Brunswick there are more than
Yeah. My brother would come home, I don't ever want to go to
Like
school.
school,
But I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I love school.
Yeah.
I did too. I was one of those.
And I loved my homeroom teachers.
Yeah.
They were my...
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to is the makeup, right? So now we have 6th graders, 5th and 6th graders at Hammersholt. Then we have 7, 8, 9 at
Yeah,
Churchill.
different
So
ones.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
Change things.
but you can build relationships if you want to build relationships, and our teachers do a phenomenal job of building relationships in our schools in spite of the setup and how difficult sometimes it is. Like Churchill, from one end to the other. The other day I clocked myself walking from one end to the other. It was like almost 8 minutes, and that was a brisk
Don't
walk.
complain. When my son went there, they walked outside.
Me too.
In the rain, in the snow.
Oh,
It was called
There was
Smith.
no, yeah.
One building.
okay, yeah.
One building was
That's
Smith.
the one
From
on the-
here to 7th grade is like a little bit.
Yeah, I like
Go
7th
a
grade.
little
7th grade is like their own little
Yeah, same.
community out there in the TCUs. It's very, and so the district has done a good job of really kind of, putting the 7th grade is here, 8th grade is here, and 9th grade is here, and they're different administrators.
Probably
but for the principal that goes up and down the place and gets his steps in, it is a matter of creating environments where kids feel like they can be themselves and they can relax, because ultimately that's what that is, right? When you talk about SEL, it's like, I just want to know that I belong.
Right.
And so
Can you explain what that is for people who don't know?
So opportunities for our kids to come together.
What does that stand for?
SEL is social emotional learning. That it's saying that if I have any kind of problems that's bothering me, and it doesn't even have to be anything big. It might be, my mom was unhappy with me or I didn't do my chores, but that has a way that affects my emotions. I might come to school and I don't want to learn. I want to address that. And some part of addressing that is being able to say, this is what I'm going through and it's whatever, and we can move on. I have a friend I can talk to, or I might say something to my teacher and my teacher will be like, don't worry about it. Do better next time and it'll be fine. That kind of sense of I could say and feel how I feel and be accepted. No one's going to make fun of me because I said that. Because others will say, oh, my dad's mad at me too. I got grounded last night. Like something like that says I belong.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
Right.
Because when kids start to withdraw into themselves when they feel nobody understands, I'm the only one going through something. So providing an opportunity like homeroom or the advisory period is providing an opportunity for kids to just express that.
Right.
And have a trusted adult. I mean, I love my mom and I used to love my mom and my dad, but I also had trusted teachers so that I could go tell them things that I didn't want to tell and they knew me. Like, it's why our athletes and their coaches, that beautiful relationship, because they can,
Right.
So that's what we're saying. To be able to kind of have that with middle schoolers and high schoolers, everybody will be catering to the health of our kids all around. So.
It's important. Thank
Yeah,
you.
It is.
thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Debbie Sani-Gill. I'm the Human Relations Vice Chair. And shifting topics now, so I would say, how do you approach issues of diversity, inclusion, and belonging in schools? How important is teacher training in achieving these goals?
Okay, so diversity, obviously, like a representation, cross-representation of race, of abilities. I think we've touched on it because we said the space is so diverse. But then in I think you said inclusion, you have to have those structures built in place that gives everybody access, right? So it doesn't matter who I am, what I'm able to do or not do, how I present or not present. I have access to any and everything that everybody else has access to. So that's your inclusion piece. And that sense of belonging and tying it all together is a good way to look at it, right? So, but our staff, our teachers are the ones that are closest to the kids. So absolutely 100%. We have to think about teacher training. We have to think about the language that is used. We have to think about the knowledge in an ever-changing world. Like the things that we used to say are not okay now because we know better. Are we keeping up? Because with the explosion of technology and all the echo chambers and the algorithms, you can be in your little silo and have no idea what's happening in another person's.
Right.
It's different now, right? Before, if I wanted to learn about one thing, it shows me different perspectives, like counters it. Now, when you are in these echo chambers and whatever social media of choice, it gives you the thing that you care about. The more you click the thing, the more it gives you that.
Amplifies
It amplifies it. And so what that does is puts people in silos and they have no idea. So there's a lot of ignorance there in terms of matters of diversity and inclusion. And I say all of that to say that. And so if we're not training properly and often, and if it's not job embedded and ongoing and sustained over time, we won't get to where we need to get to. I just want to say we need money for that too. We need money for that too. Bringing people back in the summer to kind of like, okay, what's new? What are we doing? Being aware of what's going on in the world around us is very important. I still love my current events class because that was where I could go, and I mean, I went to school a long time ago, so who knows? We could go, you hear exactly what's going on in different parts of the world, and it was so cool. And I still do that even now. Like my time out is watching, I love Al Jazeera or BBC or
Different perspectives.
Sky News, or so if I'm up at 3:00, like I was last night watching CNN International, so different from, you're just putting yourself out there. If you really want to learn, then you learn. But to be able to do that and present that kind of training for our teachers aligned with the work that they need to do and the kids that they serve in the communities that they work in is so critical to addressing matters of diversity, inclusion, and belonging.
I'm sorry. Is that something that you already have in place that have started working on?
Yes. So, as you know, it's one of those things that when I was hired, we talked about, So we've been working with, we've talked to Facing History and ourselves in terms of a reputable, purely education, no one way or the other. We're really looking at matters of diversity, of bias, of prejudice from different lenses, and who we are as educators and what our responsibility is, because we do have a responsibility. And so I'm really excited that work picks up this summer. We started, and it's a multi-year engagement, because it cannot be a one and done. And part of the work is educating the adults, and then we're simultaneously embedding some of those lessons into grade level curriculum as appropriate. Yes. So that way we can systematically say all 6th graders had this, all 7th graders had this, and you just build upon it in awareness. And we truly believe starting early 5th, 6th is going to be really key.
When are we starting this?
Well, we are we've already had our initial planning meeting, and then we start this summer. We're going to have some training, and we're going to have cohorts of teacher training, and then the following year we'll have embedded in curriculum. And so we're going to try and marry it with some assemblies, some of those cultural things that we do across the board. So you cannot say we've not exposed you. It's just you don't want to pay attention to it, And some of our social studies standards demand that we do that. There's civic citizenship in social studies, and then there is the standards around diversity, people with disabilities. And so there's a lot of it across the board that is, and we just have to make sure that we're being systemic. Right.
I have a question related to this then. So if there was a racial incident of whatever kind, right, what would be the approach or response to that?
Well, we investigate, obviously. We investigate. It's not just punitive, because we have to understand why it occurred, there are consequences. But the most important piece is that reentry, whatever that's coming back to repair the harm that has been done. We have to take clear steps to repair the harm that has been done. Who was the harm done to? What steps are we going to take to ensure it doesn't happen again? Those types of things are going to be really important. So I'm hoping we don't have a big racial. I think every racial incident is a racial incident, but the ones that we cannot, that we don't want to destroy, just the community building that we're in. We have incidents where kids immature, you hear what they say, and that's not coming from them. They've heard it from an adult.
Right.
They've seen it somewhere. A lot of it come from outside of school, is what I want to say, right? Which we address it as much as we do. And when you're in a big school, sometimes you're like, we don't even have enough staff to be any and everywhere. And that's not it. We want to be able to make sure that we're teaching kids, and we're teaching them how to stand up and say, no, that's not okay, right? We want to be able to get them to the point where they have empathy and go, that's hurtful. Why would I want to say that? Irrespective of what they're hearing outside or seeing online. And that's been the biggest issue, The phones, the social media, they have Finsta, fake Instagram. They tell me it's Finsta. But they have all these things, right? And they're in all these places and hearing all these things. It's like, it's so hard. And that's part of why I said earlier, we have to be partners. We as a community have to say, this is not okay. Pointing fingers at each other. And when something like a racial incident, that's what I meant by the big, where we're now fighting about it rather than saying, how do we ensure this doesn't happen again? So I've definitely taken steps, meeting with the Interfaith Council, trying to find ways where they can help support the kids. They could be the adults that kids go talk to, right? That's been very important because we have community members who are teachers. They're just not in our schools, but they're teachers.
Right.
And so the same thing that teachers represent to kids, an adult who I can learn from, I can talk to, can support me and give me good advice. The more of those that we have vetted, the better.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I love the Interfaith Council and I go in because I do not want to wait until there's an incident. I want to get in front of it, and we hear that more and more. But then again, you look at the world we're in and you see all the hate that's being spewed. We will be naive to think our kids will not come with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
Parents are doing the best that they can. I know that they have to work. They're not there all the time. They can't police their kids all the time, but it's not so much the quantity of time as the quality of time we spend with kids and what we're saying to them that is good, is not good. Empathy and that speaks to the strength of this community because you have just so many different people and abilities, and for the most part, the children are well. They're well. They're very kind. There's they tell us when things happen, sometimes you're just angry and you're like, yes, we did something right. They're the ones who's like, what did you, they're the ones that say, that's not okay. You cannot do that. And they tell an adult. So we love that. We love that. But it's not any one person's job.
Right.
It has to be all of our jobs to make sure that our kids are okay and are growing up in a kind, compassionate world.
And when I say it comes from the home, it's the same thing that you said about the teachers. Sometimes, the world has changed and you don't realize. I think sometimes inadvertently a parent will express a view or say a word or use a phrase, and maybe inherently they're not realizing, they're not a biased or prejudiced person, and they're not realizing, that's why when you said about educating the teachers that things are different, I think sometimes that does come from the home, and because of the environment that the kids are in, it's amplified in a different way than the way the parent might have said it or expressed it, in almost, I won't say innocently is the wrong word, but
ignorantly.
Ignorantly, that's the right word. And then the kid, because of social media and because of all of this, it becomes something different. It becomes something more. And so that's why when you were saying partnership with the parents, I think that is a very important component of this, because that's where you have to, it can't only be school. They're not in school all the time.
They're not in school all the time. And I've spent a lot of my time, and I will continue to do that, to be out in the community, just talking to people one at a time, small groups at a time. I love that because when we are there, there's a whole lot more that connects us than not.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And, right?
You learn more.
You learn more.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I could call and say to Dovey, and Dovey is going to trust me because we've worked to build relationships. So she's not going to say, oh, the school is after my child. She's going to say, what did you see? What can we do? And I'm like, okay, this is what we can do. We can do this. We can do this. What do you want to do? Right? That's what our kids need today. They don't need us fighting. They don't need us, like the first thing you think is, the kid, there's this lack of trust, and I did not experience that growing up, and even earlier in my career, even before COVID, teachers were loved.
Changed a lot.
Schools were like a safe space for our kids, and now it's kind of like, I'm coming after you because you're coming after my child. No,
Right.
So for me, that is something we have to actively and intentionally work on.
Yeah.
We cannot, for people who watch this today, we are in this together.
Right.
Like we are not I'm certainly willing to listen. We're all out there. Our teachers are, our principals are. It's a matter of just let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's not get behind ChatGPT and send all those emails, okay? We know it's where it's coming from.
Right.
Then you lose people. Pick up the phone, call, have a conversation. We want what you want, and that's what's best for kids, And I think we're all on the same side here. We just need to align.
I'll tell you, you call Insta. I call it just social media is like a noise right now.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was not like that. A little gossip here, it goes to like, oh my gosh, it just goes viral. You get all these bad sentiments.
Yes.
Everything amplifies.
Amplified.
You are not the same person anymore. And
No.
some people don't even realize they're putting something online. Like they
And it
are
never
leaving a
goes away.
footprint right there. It's not going to go away. They're not understanding, and it's just
People take screenshots, so even if you delete, it's out in the world.
It's out in the
They don't
world.
realize that it's
They don't. And
They
there's
don't
no such.
care.
noise.
They don't realize that they should care.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't realize the impact later on.
The impact is, and I think about even as an adult, and people are on Facebook saying all sorts of things about an adult. Well, I could use myself as an example. People say stuff about whatever. Even as an adult who's lived, who's like, yeah, that's your opinion. That's not. I know I still feel a certain type of way. I'm like, why would you do that and say that? All you had to do was ask me.
Right.
But that's an adult. So you imagine when that's done to a child
Right.
or a young one,
Yeah.
and it's just devastating to them. We have to be mindful. Don't get behind technology and all of that. And I really do think social media is problematic.
And I didn't mean for
Agreed.
this to turn into a
I know, but
discussion.
it
But
does.
it's such a big impact on them,
on their mental
and on their
wellness.
mental health, which is an impact on their school
Absolutely.
life. And so I just want to add to that quickly. I think the other side of the problem, we're talking about the negative, is adults have and children, I think kids too, have this thing about posting the perfect life. That minute snapshot where we're all on the beach and we're happy, where 5 minutes ago you were screaming at your kids, but you don't see that, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm a troubled teen and I'm looking at
context.
these perfect lives, I'm like, well, my family's not like that. When we're at the beach, we scream at each other. Look at this family. They're all happy and swimming.
Yeah.
And so that whole unrealistic expectation is put on any child who's having any kind of struggle or instability at home and it could not be something that's so major, but this view of other people's lives being so perfect now amplifies what is going on in your life because they don't understand that that is not really their life.
Yes, it's not. It's not. Yeah.
So I did want to piggyback to the bias-related events. We at East Brunswick Human Relations Council, we do address issues of bias, and we would love to partner and collaborate with the East Brunswick schools and the East Brunswick Board of Education. So if there's any events or if there's any bias-related events that happen, we would love to host events with you and partner with you guys and collaborate with you.
I love that.
Yeah, and then
Even without bias incidents happening.
even without bias,
That's why we're going to be at the walk, at the Unity Walk.
Yeah.
They need to see us together in
Right.
community type events. I really try so hard to be there to have a presence because it's really important.
Yes.
absolutely.
Thank you for
And then I'm going to follow up to Debbie's question earlier. How do you promote a positive school culture across the district? I know that you did touch upon it a little bit.
Yes, I did. It's about relationships, right? I could say, we have a positive school culture. We have, cultural day, and then we just had the butterfly effect, and we have all of this. But culture is my lived experience, right? So we can be all rah, rah, rah. We're happy here, but someone might just not feel that. So again, what relationships is available? What relationships can they partake in? Who is checking in and saying, do they have a friend? I always, in a couple of my previous districts, I always said, every child, we want you to have a trusted adult. And that was a goal for us.
I love that.
Just one trusted adult in the school.
Right.
And we would say to them, who's your trusted adult? Did you have, that type of thing? It didn't have to be your teacher. It just had to be a trusted. Sometimes it's the lunch lady, whatever it is. Because that's how you build culture.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter all the strategies we have. Culture will eat up strategies all day, every day. It's about that lived experience. How do I feel when I come in? And so it starts with the adults. We're the ones who take care of kids. We have to create an environment that fosters positive culture. Are we smiling? Are we, I love our elementary school principals for this. They know their kids' names, They know exactly. They're like, oh, did you play soccer this weekend? That type of thing. Of course, I'm not saying anything about the other schools. It's just more than quadruple the amount of kids. So that's hard. So in the bigger schools, do they have adults that they care about? I know the athletes, they're coaches, the clubs, right? The kids who participate in clubs or music or art, which is like more than 50% of our kids. So we're trying to continue to do that. And you start to see even it was the cultural night, I think it was at Frost, just the number of people that came out and kids, international night. I was at Irwin for the Parade of Nations, and it was like so cool. Those types of things foster positive school culture. And the teachers are there, they're involved, they're playing with the kids. There was a basketball game somewhere, I think it was like Lawrenceburg. It was the teachers versus the kids, and the kids won. Also, I heard.
I love that you're around every day.
I am around.
I love that.
Very visible.
She was at the Thanksgiving service, the interfaith service.
That was before I started.
Before she started.
I love that.
Yeah.
Before she started, she came to the service to meet.
And I was at the bear
people
crawl right here.
Before she started.
Before I started.
Love that.
And that's
Being
something
visible
to
is
be
important.
said.
Being a presence is important, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
So how do you instill this concept of every child should have a trusted adult in the school?
I mean, we're talking about it. I can confidently say most of our kids, depending on the school, have a trusted adult that they go to. But if one does not, that's problematic.
Yeah.
If two,
How would you know?
How would you know?
Yeah.
And how
that's a good question. There are different ways to know that. We do not have, SEL, explicit SEL curriculum. Like when you have like an assessment, there are assessments to check in, like even with the little kids with a smiley face, what do you feel today? Just little things like that. And who do you want to talk to? So it starts small from the classroom, and then you build up to courses, different clubs, but we have to have a mechanism in place to check that.
Yeah.
So in the previous districts that I've worked in, we've had SEL assessments. There's DESA. There's DESA in South Brunswick. We use DESA K-8.
Every student? Wow.
So I'm looking to do something similar. We have pockets of it here, but it's not available for all. But I would like to strengthen our tier 1 across the board.
I love to.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So if we strengthen tier 1 across the board, then I'm not forced to, because if I keep breaking things up and these kids need this, so they go here, we can't hire enough.
No.
And honestly, it's good for all kids.
Yeah.
First of all, right? So my goal next year is really to start to build an explicit multi-tiered system of support, not just for academics. For academics, we have it, but it's not systematic. So we have all the pieces. We just have to align and make it systematic, right? But we need to have for behavior and we need to have for SEL, explicit, so that once you start to do that, then you can account for every kid.
So,
And I think, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think if you have tier 1 across the board, organically they find their way to tier 2 and tier 3.
Yes.
If the kids need it.
Yes, if they need it. And we should not have less than 5% one in tier 3. There's nothing.
Right. But I think organically they work their way up because
obviously.
of tier 1.
Yes, if you have a strong
If you
tier
have,
1.
yeah.
Right.
So that's our goal.
and along those lines, I was actually going to say was that we mentioned partnering with the Human Relations Council, right? To cultivate programs and foster positive relationships with different cultures, et cetera. But along with also partnering with the mental health task force of the town, because we could also, put on programs together collaboratively to help in that endeavor as well to, foster better mental health strategies, techniques, you name it. That would be great for our kids. The families could benefit as well. and participate. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know because one of the things we will start off with, in fact, I already told the person who's going to be leading it, is going to have a district SEL committee,
So we
district-wide.
That would be great if we could be on
Yeah.
it. Mental health could be on it.
Yeah, so I see an avenue there for us to do some collaboration.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to be working in conjunction with Rutgers and see if I can get some clinicians in here as well. Like, so we have some things but I would
some
love
work.
to.
We could collaborate with that.
Thank you. And I like that it's free too. So
Yeah.
I like free.
Yeah, you're in the room here with the Human Relations Council of
Yes.
Mental Health and the Interfaith Clergy, all of whom are looking to collaborate and bring people in, you know,
We would love
and
that.
work together. Yeah.
We would love that.
And the Clergy Council has a lot of people who are former teachers. on
Yes,
you-
that was what I
you
learned. And I was like,
learn.
okay, good. That serves me and our kids, right? Because we don't forget we are still a public school. We have rules and regulations we
Right,
have to follow.
right,
So,
Absolutely.
but mental health support,
health,
community
human relations,
collaboration,
yeah,
human
yeah,
relations, absolutely. I will take it. I will take it all.
You are solid. You're golden.
So,
I'm going
right,
to put our
exactly.
Scouting America right there too.
Okay,
We're here, all our
Tony.
leaders. We get all these background training.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Well, that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
Is really
Collaboration.
just collaboration and
Collaboration,
partnership
all
and
of it.
communication.
Yes,
right?
And
communication.
seeing the families
Yeah.
where they are and the kids, you know,
Yeah.
reaching them where they are.
Yes.
Families. And
Yes, and then we expand our little tiny, so it's not just here, the schools. We're
Right.
Yeah.
kind of expanding
Yeah.
and wrapping around. I love that.
Yeah.
As a final thought, what changes academically or what challenges academically do you think schools need to make to prepare students for the future? And also academically, where do you see the school now and what challenges do you see that you're facing with the academic program?
That is such a good question because the world is changing. Our kids are, for me as a child of Nigerian parents, I could be four things, right? I could be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or a failure. So clearly, failure over here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Things have
Certainly not a
changed.
failure.
No. My mom was a teacher. Trust me. It's just we joked that there was very limited career paths that was looked at as successful.
Right.
Our kids now have the world is their oyster. What they will make money and make a living and what's going to be the profession of the future, we don't even know as we prepare them. We just know we have to prepare them to be able to think critically, to be able to collaborate and work with others, to be able to research. So we should be doing things like that. But we have a structure that is the same structure for so long.
Right.
And so part of what we need to be looking at is the way we do school good for this generation of children, our generation, alphas, betas, I don't even know what they are at this point, right? Is this good for them? Because that's part of what we're also seeing, that you could sit in the class and listen to a teacher teach for X amount of minutes and the kids are following you or taking notes. That's not what we have now, right?
Right.
So there are different ways we have to start to think creatively about who is the kid in front of us, how best do they learn, and what do we want them to know and be able to do when they leave us? And do we have a curriculum and that is written in a way that can be taught and learned and assessed so that our kids can go out there and be able to really compete in 2026, 2027, or whatever year that is. And so that means we really have to think beyond the traditional type classes, all the electives, all the APs, and we talk about mental health and how many courses are our kids taking? What does that look like?
How does AI play a role?
AI.
Yeah.
That could be a whole other
Yeah.
for discussion about AI.
Right.
Because some people will tell you that AI is, there's research that shows that AI it's like reduced our capacity to think critically, because some of us rely
Right.
on it instead of doing the heavy the heavy lifting that we used to do. So we have to kind of look at AI as a companion, whether it's a human, AI, human. So I say I like human, AI, human. If I want to if Holly emails me, for instance, I'm just going to use an email. And says to me, blah, 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 she wants something. Can you send me a description of what you do here and here? So I'm going to sit down, I'm going to jot down what it is that we do. And then I could say to AI, help me clean it up.
Right.
AI cleans it up, and I'll take it back again and do my human piece of it and go, okay, I need to put this in there,
Right.
put in this in there. But what it does, I'm not totally not involved. It's helping me think a different way,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So we need to really look at what that is. So instead of saying, no, we don't want technology and no, we don't want AI, you're doing your kids a great disservice, right?
Right.
So what are they using it for? How are they using it? And how involved are you to see what it is that they're using it for? I know everybody's like, oh, it's not good, it's not good, it's not good. Okay. Do you want our kids to compete? So it's not so much, it's how are you using it?
Right.
We want our kids to be able to make a choice. It's the same thing with phones.
Yeah.
Right.
They have to call their parents for different things.
Yeah.
But they should know when to use it, when not to. You need to build that resilience and that muscle. It's like, you go to the gym if you want to, you lift weights and you know when not to. It's the same thing. You can't swoop in all the time and say, we're taking it away from you. But then we've not taught you anything. Right. So for academics, you have to look at it that way. We see now, we used to have trade schools.
Right.
And then we took it away. Everybody's going to college. Everybody's not going to college.
Yeah.
And that's okay because my plumber makes a lot of money.
Right.
My electrician makes more money than I do. Like, I want to learn something with my hands.
Right.
And so we have to really think through society now and just kind of forecast. And the good thing is we have the research that tells us what it is that we're doing. So for some of our parents are like, you will be a doctor, that's great. But what does medicine look like
Yeah.
Right.
in the world that you're going to be in? There's all sorts of medicines now that we never really even thought about, or engineering that we never read, or the environment. And then most importantly, for academics especially, what matters to our children?
Right.
Because if we are able to present things to them based on what matters, we can hook them, we can pull their interest. So for me, it's really reimagining school, a little at a time, and what might that look like? That gets me really excited. You can see I'm all pepped up about reimagining what that looks like, and I cannot wait to do some of that work here.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that. I think they're starting to realize that the 4-year college path is not the right thing for everybody. Number one, because there's a lot of startup and self-businesses now, in addition to those physical.
It's social media, they make money from
right.
YouTube.
And the other thing, too, is that
Influencer.
Yeah, but and the other thing too is that beside being able to do those, that white collar, I went to 4 years of school, I'm going into corporate business job, doesn't really exist. So if we're training our kids for a job that doesn't really exist, we're doing them a disservice. They come out of school with a college loan, a 4-year degree, to look for a job that doesn't exist anymore.
We'll not even pay them as much as their college loans.
Right. And when you talk about going to AI, it reminds me, I'm the old lady in the room, and it reminds me, I think about when I was a kid, we used to go to the library, pull out the cards, find the encyclopedia, find the book based on the Dewey Decimal Number, right? And then my kids, everything was like, oh, I'll Google the answer. And I'm thinking to myself, you'll Google the answer, go look and read in an encyclopedia.
No, that's too much work.
But nobody did
I
that,
could pull
right?
the encyclopedia from Google. Though.
They would Google, right? But they would Google the answer. Where I was doing it, read, and when I felt like when I had to go do the research and read, I read so much more.
Yes.
Because when you Google the answer, that's it.
Yeah.
When I had to research it, I read this, and then I read this, and then I read this, and maybe here was the answer, and maybe I put it together. So I felt
That's
like we're
what that
losing all that, right?
Yes.
And yet here's a whole generation who Googled and survived it. And now the same thing. Well, now we're AI.
Yeah.
Now
So
we have
it's that
ChatGPT to
same-
tell us.
Right. It's that same transition to me as it was going from paper to Googling.
Yes.
We're now going from Googling to AI.
Yeah.
And we survived, you know?
Yes.
And we'll survive this, but that's
Because
the
you
thing.
learn
If you
how
learn
to.
how to use it and use it properly is really the key.
Yes, because we can't say don't use it.
Right.
Correct.
That's
I
not.
couldn't tell my kids go read the
Yeah, that's
encyclopedia.
not fair. But
Right.
you're saying, okay, so what are you using it for?
Yeah.
Right.
And how? And
Right.
it's not right. How do you know it's right? Where are your checks and balances so that you're very much involved there? I think that I don't believe in absolutes. Like, I don't, like, we're like, never do this again and don't do this. It's bad for you. I'm always kind of like, but why? Be curious.
And a balanced approach, I guess, right?
That's very good. I
Yes,
mean, I don't want to
yes,
say
you're
balanced
saying.
approach because balanced literacy, everybody's against that now, but a balanced approach is the way to go.
And it's encouraging to see that you realize that different kids have to take different paths through high school because they're going to have different paths after.
Success looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a plug in for our Coffee and Conversation. We do have an AI segment, entire segment on AI.
Yeah, which will be coming
So
out.
we'll be coming out soon.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, right.
Look out for it.
Okay.
It's a student-led
Absolutely.
event, so we're excited about it.
Even more fun.
Even more fun, yes. From the students' perspective.
I
what
would
they
love
think.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
On behalf of the East Brunswick Human Relations Council, I want to extend our sincere thank you to Dr. Mamman for joining us today. We truly appreciate you taking the time out of your demanding schedule to engage in this vital dialogue with our council and the community. Your willingness to share your vision, address our questions, and discuss the future of our students demonstrates a sheer commitment to fostering an environment where every individual feels seen, heard, and supported. Today's conversation provided us with valuable insights into the direction of our district. We look forward to continuing this partnership, working together to ensure that our schools remain a place of belonging and excellence for all our students. We're excited about your work ahead and the positive impact our collaboration will have on the township. Thank you again for your transparency and your leadership. We wish you a productive remainder of the school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to invite everyone to our upcoming 10th annual Unity Walk. It's on Tuesday, May 12th at 6:30 p.m. at the Municipal Pond by the library. 10 years, one community, come walk with us. I'd also like to thank EBTV for all they do. This would not have been possible without them. So thank you so much, EBTV, for all that you do.
Thank you.